Welcome to today's episode of our podcast. If you're ready to unlock your true potential of networking and elevate your personal and professional life, well, you are in the right place. Today, we have a powerhouse guest who has mastered the art of networking and is here to share his secret with us. Meet Steve Ramona, a networking guru who has discovered the immense power of building connections at a very young age. Steve is on a mission to teach the world how to network the right way, how to leverage what you're doing, how you're doing it. And Steve believes this medium can help build an incredible inner circle and bring unparalleled value to every interaction. This episode, we're going to look at how do you bring value in every conversation? How do you serve before you sell? And how you look at your network is your net worth. Get ready to take notes, transform your approach to networking with insights from the expert himself, Steve Ramona. Now play on and let's dive into the world of networking like never before.
Welcome to Power Your Profits Podcast, your friendly guide in bringing your business revenue to the next level. Listen as host Dr. Susie Carter hears inspiring stories of success from her fellow entrepreneurs and transformational leaders. Prepare to make significant change to your strategies as they unravel the secrets of building multi-million-dollar businesses and the most effective tips on finance, marketing, and sales accountability. If you want to take your first steps towards explosive business growth, this podcast is for you. Without further ado, here is your host, Dr. Susie.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited that you're here. So why don't you tell our listeners, what is your jam? What is your secret sauce? What do you love doing? All that good stuff.
Law of increase. If you read Think and Grow Rich, chapter 4, I believe, don't quote me on that, you can check. I read that a couple of years ago, realized I've been increasing people's lives, or in a better way of saying it, bringing value. So that's my superpower. Every person I meet, and Susie, you even felt it when we met, is how do we bring value? And I've taken to a next step to bring even more value, more than everybody else, just to be a bigger servant's heart.
Yes, I love, you have one of your statements, which you just said was how to bring value in every conversation. That's part of our guiding principles, bring value in every conversation to every situation. So Steve, I know it feels like a brother from another mother. I know I say that a lot, but there's so much synergy around who you are, what you do. So talk about how you serve before you sell.
I meet somebody for the first time or a follow-up. It's been months. My first thought is shut up, listen, and then ask. And I'll say that again, shut up, listen, and ask. And people go, well, listening, shutting up. I said, no. Go to a Zoom room. You've been to a meeting, whatever it is, a number of boxes, the Brady Bunch boxes. How many people have gone black? How many people are not even looking at the screen? Yeah. So they've shut up, but they're listening. Just because you mute yourself doesn't mean you're listening. And there's circumstance where people have to do it. I completely understand that. But I found to take it more values. I was just in a meeting 2 days ago and I stayed on. A couple of people left and the person reached out and said, Steve, I appreciate you staying on and listening. I just brought them value. I served them by being there and being attentive. Again, you can't do it 100% of the time. But if you shoot for 95% or 90%, it's a new way of bringing value to people.
Right. So talk about the value that you bring to people. Like what's your business? What are you providing for people? How can they really leverage your relationships and your connections?
Well, I'm a super connector. It's been my moniker now. I've got a massive network and I'm able to go. Somebody says, I want to speak more. I've got a program that I can share with them to show them that we're going to find places to speak. So I'm always tying in my network to what the person's pain point or what they're looking for. And that's powerful. And anybody can do it. I'm good. I'm special. I'm not special, but I'm special because I take action. I've learned it. So again, it's back to shut up and, shut up, listen, and ask those questions. So you want to speak more? Do you want to be on more stages? Do you want to be on podcasts? And delving into a little deeper, I can go into my large network and go, hey, let me introduce you to this person. Here's a service to try, and here's a resource. Now, my process is my podcast. You have an incredible podcast. Listen to a couple of them. Audience, Susie is a rock star. Here's the power of podcast: motivation, education, and inspiration. And we bring that to people and we develop relationships. What's a relationship leading to? More people in your network.
Yeah, I was talking to a client. She goes, "How many people have you gotten from your podcast?" I'm like, "Well, it's not one thing we do, it's all the things we do." People think like there's one silver bullet, but in building a business, building your network, because you talk about building your network and the value in that, um, it's about leveraging everything that you do. So let's talk about our networks, your network, my network, their network, and the value that your network brings to you.
Every time I do some type of value referral, a resource tip, audience, think about this. What is the next thing? This is really important. They're going to go, "Hey, Steve, thank you. How can I help you?" And that's the ask. I'm looking for a sponsor here. I'm looking for these kind of guests. I'm looking for somebody maybe in a direct mail, familiar with direct mail, whatever that may be. You filled that infinity loop. It's that sideways 8. I had a gentleman I met 2 years ago that made $250 million serving. And I told him my story. And he goes, "Steve, you're not doing it right." I'm like, "Okay, I'm serving. What am I doing wrong?" He goes, "Steve, you're giving so many Christmas gifts. You need to receive those Christmas gifts back, and you're not." Once I learned that, Susie, my income, my network, everything in my business changed completely.
Right. I find that when you are a giver, it's hard to receive. So what's one thing you did to start receiving?
Having something I can give to people when they ask. Make sure when you're in a meeting and somebody asks you, "How can I help you?" Is it a podcast? Is it your business? Is it people you work with in your business? Maybe it's champions that you want to referral partners. Know what that is. So when people ask you, "How can I support you?" Don't go, let me think about it. Go, "Nope, I need a podcast guest. I'm looking for NFL players. I'm looking for successful business owners." Have that on the ready to go, and people appreciate it.
So let's talk about your business and business growth, because this is Power Your Profits, right? And really looking at what's one thing, Steve, that you did to grow your business that you didn't expect, that now is that secret sauce that you do every day.
The podcast.
The podcast.
It just leveraging, and we'll go over. I didn't think it would be like this. I learned from Josh Tapp, who's my mentor, now business partner, is I just did it to highlight and serve my clients at the time. But I realized the client would go, "Hey, meet Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI. He'd love to be on your podcast." "Yeah, let's do it." And he was on my podcast. Billionaires calling me saying, "Hey, I saw your podcast. I want to work with you. I don't know what that looks like, but let's get together." So those type of things built my network, because I used to run 6 networking groups. I was the lead guy and facilitated the meetings, loved doing them, but it was a lot of talking business, and that's okay. We want people to do business in a network, meaning a referral partner, potential client, somebody that could help you with a resource. Again, back to that value. That's so powerful.
Yes, juicy. So what are some ways that most of our listeners either, they have some kind of podcast? How can they leverage their own podcast? Because I think some people like you started out, "I'm just doing it to serve," but we want to serve, but obviously we're doing it to market. So what are some things that we can do to really leverage our own podcasts, our own audiences?
So great question, Susie. Oh my God, guys, this is you're so awesome. In your industry, find the successful people. For example, you're in finance.
Yeah.
Reach out to Warren Buffett's team. Reach out to highly successful financial people in your industry and go, "Hey, I love what you're doing. I love this message that you're doing. I'd love to have you on my podcast." I just had a guest on this morning, 35 years in finance. He's an absolute servant's heart, making millions. He had no problem being on my podcast. He was excited to be on my podcast. So the podcast is your business card now, where if any of these people wanted to meet with me, they never would have. There's no reason to. They don't need digital business cards. And that's nothing against me. It's what I was doing. But
Right.
with the podcast, whatever you're doing, interviewing people have a message they want to tell. That's the power of that.
You're listening to another episode of Power Your Profits podcast. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Overwhelmed by the complexity of business profit strategies? Jump aboard the Bullet Train to Big Profits course, a streamlined solution by Dr. Susie Carter. This course is designed to uncomplicate the path to profitability. Imagine being able to identify and execute profit strategies with ease, skyrocketing your revenues. Visit course.poweryourprofits.com and sign up for the Bullet Train to Big Profits course today. Are you tired of struggling to take your business to the next level? Power Your Profits is the game-changing book you've been waiting for. Dr. Susie Carter, creator of the Predictable Success Method, reveals her proven strategies for explosive growth. From daily operations to marketing systems, this comprehensive guide empowers you to achieve predictable revenue and profit growth. Don't miss out on this invaluable wisdom. Transform your business today. Find your copy at books.poweryourprofits.com.
And then what would you say that the most important lesson that you've learned in pivoting your business that you do now, like the back of your hand?
The value, bringing value to everybody. I don't care if they make $200 a week to $200,000 a month. People are always looking at ways to help people. And it could be, and actually it's a pretty cool background that you have. Hey, Susie, you have a great background on your Zoom. Now, keep in mind, you might affect them 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 months, or 5 years. But the 5-second impact is still an impact. And the universe hears that, and it will change.
So let's talk about some of the biggest challenges you faced in building your business, and then what you learned. So I know I learn more in the valleys than I do on the mountaintop. I think because they're more painful and more memorable. What would you say some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned?
I was afraid to reach out to successful people, thinking, why would they want to be on my podcast? And just doing it, just taking action and asking. Because what's the worst thing that happens, audience? They say no, next. Say no, next. Then you get a yes. And on a quick side note, I've done 408 shows, 408. I've had one person say no because they didn't have time. It's a pretty good track record. And some of these are very, like Susie was on my show. I was very grateful. Successful people that can learn. So they ask, because what's the worst thing that can happen?
Right. Yeah, I find it I very rarely get a no. We might have a scheduling snafu. It might take 6 months, but everyone wants to talk about what they do and leverage what they're doing. And it's an honor, really. People get caught up in the stats and, well, I don't have a big enough listening. And look, if we find one client or we serve one client, especially if you're like us, we're servant heart. We come from giving first, right? We don't have what are you doing for me now, Steve? What are you doing for me now? So I think that's important for all of us just to remember, like that's the humility in being an entrepreneur. And nobody likes to be humble, right? When you're starting out or when you're seasoned, you want to act like you have it all together, but there's so much value in that.
There is. I learned a great phrase today from my guest I was talking about, wonderful man. He says, people chasing money, it's their need. Well, if you find out their why and their pain, like you said earlier, that's their need. Focus on their need, not knowing your need, and you'll do really well. Hey, short-term money lasts very short. That's why it's short-term money. Long-term money is building that relationship. Maybe they become your client in 6 weeks, but then they stay 2 years, or they become your client in a day and they stay 3 weeks. You can figure out the numbers, what's going to make you more money.
Right. So let's talk about, because you talked a little bit about it, one of your mentors. So who's been your most important professional mentor to you, and what'd you learn?
So Josh Tapp, who I started with to build my podcast and teach me and educate me. And he's 32 and he is an incredible business person. He sold and bought many, many businesses at a very young age, but he saw, and I saw, that he wanted to help. He wanted to support people. And here's a great lesson. So when I started that program with 20 people, I was the only one that was successful because I would listen to his advice. Here's the lesson on that. I call it reverse value. So I'm bringing him value by listening and being successful. So what happens next? He just reached out last year and said, I'd love for you to be my business partner. Out of the blue. I have no idea. I said, absolutely. And then we met a week later. And I said, Josh, you're super successful. I haven't sold businesses. He says, Steve, you got a superpower. You're a connector and you got a large network. We can work together. We can grow massively and help, what he said, help 1,000 thought leaders change the world. I'm like, wow, talk about reverse value.
That is delicious, right?
Yeah, that's a great word.
So I know that you've been a business person for a long time. So what's been one of your most favorite productivity hacks, right? We're all trying to get more done in half the amount of time. So what's been your favorite productivity hack? I think I know the answer, but I want to just.
Well, right off the top of my head, I'm thinking AI. I found AI with LinkedIn and my podcast that now I teach people. I'm actually doing a workshop today of how to do a podcast and have it out in 20 minutes after it's recorded. Because I figured out four things. People are worried about time, money, guests, and how to do it. And I solve all those fairly quickly. Less than $80 a month, even less. You could do it in 20 minutes. You don't have to do an hour, 2 hours of producing it. Now, if you want to produce it, yeah, go for it. If you can afford it, that's even better. But mine are all conversational. My idea is to be content they can hear it. If they can hear the content, no matter what the background, what they're wearing, what they look like, that's the most important thing. And be energetic. I have a little bit of energy.
Just a little bit, which is why we love each other, right?
Yeah.
So what time of day do you find, as an entrepreneur is most productive for you? And you
5:30 in the morning.
What?
5:30 in the morning.
I stumbled on my words. See what 5:30 in the morning? Clearly that's not mine.
Yeah. I started this. I do trading in the morning. I love doing that. I love the fun. It's not about the money, but there's a little bit of money involved. But I realized when I started doing that to get up to trade, I could get so much done because everybody's asleep. I could go get work done. I'm not being distracted because I work from home, and a lot of us are working from home. So it's a great lesson. And if it's not 6:30, whatever it's earlier than what the family or the people in your house get up, it's usually the best time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll start, but I don't start that early. But I agree. I get a lot of my stuff, my thinking stuff done in the morning that I'm not distracted. So, what's one thing, Steve, you wish I would have asked you?
It's a great question. I wish you asked how big my network is.
Ooh, yes. How big is your network?
I don't know the exact, it's thousands. I did 1,800 referrals last year. I don't know if you know this. I figured out the numbers the last 11 years. I did $25 million in deals. Putting people together to collaborate. Yeah. So it's a powerful number. Didn't realize it until I went over it.
Now, when you do that, are you getting a rev share on your referrals?
So here's great question. This is a great lesson for everybody. Before I met this $250 million guy, I made $10,000 off that 25 million. Now, servant hearts are going, well, that's great. You served them. It's a bit, we also are in business. I use a 10% rule. I should have been 2.5 million. So I've learned from that. And now I'm way past 10. I'm at 20% now. I don't know my numbers right now, but see, learning that number realized to me, got to ask Steve, hey, Susie and Joe, I'd love to put you guys here. Can I get a piece of the pie?
Yes. I think that's just smart business, right? And we're all afraid to, but the reality is some people just like a super connector is worth their weight in gold. I got a book deal from one of my friends that was a super connector, right? We had been shopping for 6 months and then one conversation with my super connector and boom, the book deal was basically in my hand. So it's definitely worth it. When you look at advertising costs, right? I always look at these relationships of, they're going to spend it on Google. I'm going to spend it on Facebook, or I'll spend it with Steve. I'd much rather spend it with Steve because then Steve's always thinking of me, like, how can I support Susie? How can I support Susie? So I think that's important. Most people don't. They just, either give the referral, which is great. That's giving. But if that's one of your genius zones, let's leverage that puppy, right?
Yeah. And the other thing too is if I have a coach that has an affiliate program and one that doesn't, and they're similar, and let's say they're mindset coaches, I'm going to lean towards the guy with the affiliate because they're both good. Yeah. Now, if that doesn't work, I still do the referrals because of the servant heart, but it's a win-win-win. An audience, you've heard of win-win.
Yes.
This is a triple win because the client gets a great coach or whatever it may be. The coach gets no marketing, pays me, so let's use 10,000. He pays me 2. He puts 8 in his pocket for one meeting.
Right.
Hour, $8,000 an hour.
Exactly.
Look at it that way. Break it down simply.
So simple.
Easy.
So how do people get in touch with you, Steve? What's the best way to come play with you? How do we really monetize our relationship with you? I know you've got some juicy stuff for us. So talk about how we can play with you and how they can get into hold of you.
Yeah, LinkedIn, Steve Ramona, Steve Ramona, Ramona. Everybody knows how to spell Steve. I'm there every day. My digital business card, Infone, INPHONE, infone.co/podcast. So infone.co/podcast. All my communication tools are there. Reach out to me, phone, email, everything is there. I put out my cell phone number. People want to text, reach out, absolutely, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Delicious. And Steve's generosity, he's giving us a 14-day free trial to his community of thought leaders and business leaders. The link will be in the show notes, so please take advantage of that. You want to share a little bit about that, Steve? What is that and why should we participate in that?
We're building a community of entrepreneurs that can work together. Here's the cool thing: build events together, build workshops together. So we teach in our Pantheon community. Go out if you're a coach and you want, I can't think of another coach that does something different, and then another coach, you guys build an event together and charge. Well, your thought leader expertise gets out there, but then you make a little bit of money. But you have to be in a community to do that and find the people to connect. So we're connecting people all the time. We have some software on LinkedIn to connect people to do that. But it's such a powerful tool to be involved with entrepreneurs. I wish they'd make that word smaller, but it is what it is. Entrepreneurs who want to grow and scale.
And then when I looked at what was most impressive to me, Steve, is just looking at the testimonials. Someone's earned $192,000. Somebody landed $1 million campaign. They $500,000 in 6 months, right? The top 1% for their podcast. So it's the real deal. It's not just somewhere to hang out. It's about action. Steve talked about it throughout our podcast. He is an action taker. And Joan Baez says action is the antidote for despair. So don't sit on this value. When you go look at the testimonials, when you go look at what people have created, just follow the breadcrumbs, right? What's made Steve successful is he was in action. And so we're saying, let's be in action. Let's make this happen. So Steve, thank you for your time. Thank you for your generosity. And if you love this podcast, you love Steve, you love to connect Steve with someone, follow Steve. You share this with your community, with your tribe. Somebody needs a super connector like Steve. So Steve, thank you so much. I value you. I appreciate you. And I look forward to making more deals together with my super connector friend.
Thank you and God bless.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Power Your Profits podcast. Let these building blocks from today's most successful industry leaders equip you with the necessary resources and tools to finally establish the highly profitable business of your dreams. Want to hear more? Listen to more episodes at www.poweryourprofitspodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. Now is your time to rise to the top of your game. So be sure to catch our next episode. Until next time.